中共国教育部下发通知，要求各地学校组织学生收看2020年征兵宣传片，抓壮丁又要开始了。环球网资讯称，浙江海事局、舟山相关海域将进行实弹射击训练。中共党媒刊文，魏凤和同美国国防部长通电话，要求美停止错误言行。8月7日，川普总统宣布将在45天后禁止任何美国个人及企业与 TikTok 母公司微信、字节跳动进行任何交易。当日，腾讯股票暴跌10%，市值蒸发5000亿港元。中共央行称，包商银行被提起破产申请，何时才能兑现储户资金呢？
工信部发布了一个数据，截至7月底，全国核酸日检测能力达到484万人份。如此大规模的核酸检测能力是吹不出来的，背后是实实在在的能力，包括生产检测试剂的能力、采集的能力等等。当然，咱们有这样的能力，也是在持续的为全球战役做出贡献。
8月7日，武汉出现倒地死，视频中示意出租车司机走出车来，忽然倒地身亡。他们俺来抢救一下子。
忍不了泪滴，在繁华城市里，我们抵抗着命运。不要这样哦！成功不是一朝一夕。不要这样哦！再多不易，不要这样了。还要继续，前方如此艰辛，还是要去面临。人生的不如意，我不会让它伤害我自己。拼了命的前进，脱离掉困境。生活本就不易，活着需要靠演技。
8月7日，陕西省咸阳市、西安市遭遇强暴雨，多地道路变河流。咸阳市佳汇商场一排商铺突然倒塌。
长江大坝、长江三峡大坝禁止放洪水。
三峡大坝夜间泄洪，根本不顾下游老百姓死活。
新布尼亚病毒出现在中国，截至目前，在中国大陆的江苏、安徽和浙江等地已经确诊62人，死亡7人。专家解读说，感染这种病毒后，可以看到白细胞会流失，并伴随体内出血。下一则消息，
我们要做的是香港现在发生什么，要把现在发生的事情要传播出去，要把真实的图片、真实的视频从香港出来的经我们手转发给内地，让很多很多的人要知道现在香港发生了什么。我今天又得上1天班，到晚上8点才能下。时间对我来说是如此的珍贵，我要用自己业余的短暂的这点时间，我也去传播。现在不是传播保护，是传播香港真相。
World fights the deadly coronavirus, there is a new virus that has come to scare the world, and this virus too has been reported to come from China. A new infectious disease caused by a tick-borne virus has killed over 7 people and infected 60 others in China. Official media here reported on Wednesday, warning about the possibility of its human-to-human transmission. More than 37 people in East China's Jiangsu province contracted with the SFTS virus in the first half of the year. Later, 23 people were found to have been infected in East China's Anhui province, state-run Global Times quoted media reports. A woman from Nanjing, capital of Jiangsu, who suffered from the virus showed onset of symptoms such as fever, coughing. Doctors found a decline of leukocyte blood platelet inside her body. After a month of treatment, she was discharged from the hospital. At least 7 people have died in Anhui and East China's Zhejiang province due to the virus, the report said. SFTS virus is not a new virus. China has isolated pathogen of the virus in 2011. And it belongs to the Bunya virus category.
We have a breaking story for you now out of China this morning. A court there has sentenced a Canadian man to death over drug charges. A Chinese accomplice has been given a life sentence. And of course, tensions with China are already high over the arrest and detention of Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou and the detention of 2 Canadians, Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig. What could all of this latest verdict, mean for Canada's relationship with China?
Well, certainly this is going to raise alarm bells because this is in fact the 3rd Canadian national to be sentenced to death.
China's Communist Party has now set up a cyberspace administration portal. Sounds boring. In fact, it's used to dob in people, including Chinese students here and their teachers, who are at all critical of China. And maybe this helps to explain why a number of Chinese students here are so very aggressive in defending China, and why our university is so quick to give in to them.
Not uncommon in Australia's higher education has become way too reliant on Chinese money. A remarkable statistic, the UNSW gets 27% of its overall revenue from Chinese overseas students. So this has been a case of financial mismanagement, exposing the university to the risks of something like a pandemic, and as a result, it seems a case of China paying the piper and calling the tune. We've had these alarming reports that with the Chinese students coming in, the university is so hungry and greedy for the money, many of the students can't even speak English. And you've got a massive drop in academic standards where the academics just tick and flick and hand out the certificate to cash in on the Chinese dough.
I'll give you a second example now. An academic at Charles Darwin University up in Darwin sent his students a question about the coronavirus that's now gone around the world, and he said, we've got this global pandemic originating in Wuhan, China, has caused over 250,000 deaths, rendered millions of people ill, and inflicted recession on most areas of the global economy. And again, he had Chinese students complaining to the university, saying this was racist, saying this virus started in Europe. And the university's Pro-Vice-Chancellor, Sam Jacob, has apologised to these students. He said, we apologise unreservedly for the offence and upset that this has caused. The wording has now been corrected, and the college team are working together to make sure that this does not happen again.
This is the problem with Chinese money compromising academic standards and the core purpose of our university.
Welcome back. The nuclear arms race. The Wall Street Journal out with an exclusive report saying that Saudi Arabia has expanded its nuclear program with the help of China. A new facility in the country's northwest region is raising flags. It's reportedly being used to harvest yellow cake uranium. Joining me right now is Presidential Envoy for Arms Control, Ambassador Marshall Billingsley. And Ambassador, thanks very much for being here. Can you give us a status check on what's going on in terms of this new facility in Saudi Arabia and the nuclear ambitions there?
And what I would say is that it's going to be crucial that the Saudis commit, and I'm sure they will, to full safeguards under the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency. I also said that I think with regard to U.S. nuclear cooperation, and again, this is for civil nuclear purposes, for power generation, we should negotiate, and I'm sure we will, a set of agreements that forego enrichment and reprocessing, which are really the two kinds of technologies that would be most concerning in terms of pivoting from a civil program to a weapons program. But what's key here, Maria, is to recognize that the companies that the Saudis are doing business with in China are state-owned enterprises, and those very companies are the same ones involved in China's massive nuclear buildup, its nuclear weapons crash program. And that's I think, of great concern.
Last week, the president said that this outside of Marine One, he said, right now we are the great nuclear power. We've upgraded our nuclear tremendously since. We have the most power. Russia is second, and China is third. China is surging. There'll be more at some point, and yeah, we would want to talk to China eventually about this. Meanwhile, China is doing these side deals, Ambassador, right. And the one with Iran, to me, seems most concerning.
Well, it is, but I would actually suggest that most concerning is what China is doing itself. Just like with the coronavirus, China is throwing up a great wall of secrecy to the world regarding its nuclear buildup. In the last segment, you mentioned the Global Times, which is the Chinese Communist Party's mouthpiece. And nothing is written from an editorial standpoint in that paper that isn't sanctioned at the highest levels of the Chinese government. That newspaper, just a few months ago, called for China to have 1,000 deployed nuclear warheads. Just for comparison, the United States and Russia, under the New START Treaty, have limited themselves to 1,500 warheads. So we are talking about a really alarming and secretive buildup by the Chinese Communist Party under Chairman Xi.
General Spaulding, you're one of the finest pilots the Air Force has ever produced. You were the smartest guy, I think, in the White House when I was there. And the question I have for you, because you've dedicated your life now to this topic against the Chinese Communist Party. We're at a information, cyber, technology, and economic war with the Chinese Communist Party. Does the United States today have the strategic resolve in actually the wise heads that we had during World War II to win this conflict against the Chinese Communist Party?
You know, what's interesting, Steve, about the nuclear weapon and the Internet are two technologies invented by the United States. One that allowed us to dominate what I would call the 20th century way of war, which is mass killing. The 21st century way of war is really influence at the individual level using the apps, services, and business model that Silicon Valley created. So interestingly enough, we invented the Internet, but the Chinese Communist Party, who really, conduct political warfare as their major means of warfare, it's completely different than the way we think about it. They actually adapted the Internet as a weapon system, and that's where we've actually fallen down as a country, because we understand how to fight and kill. What we don't understand is this way of war that the Chinese Communist Party has adapted the Internet for. So it's something that we're going to have to figure out.
General Spaulding, I want to thank you for coming on. I know you've been very busy today. We've got a major announcement with General Spaulding next week. He's going to be back for a special. We'll tease it out next week. But General Spaulding's been working on a project that I know all of America and our allies are going to want to know about. General Spaulding, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
So I want to bring in now Dr. Edward Luttwak, I think considered the preeminent strategist, geopolitical strategist around. To follow up on that comment, Dr. Luttwak, what has changed since the nuclear weapon was dropped in Hiroshima till today strategically? How does this, the dropping of the bomb and then the second bomb a couple of days later set up the nuclear age? Is General Spalding right? Are there weapons out there today or a means of actual conducting warfare, technologically, economically, information that has changed the game?
Well, will you allow me to go back 3 steps and point out a few things from history which are strangely overlooked? First, the decision to drop the bomb was made before it was known that there was any radiation effect. Scientists didn't know the radiation existed, but the decision makers had no idea that this was more than a blast, big blast. Second point, there was an American war plan for the conquest of Japan. It was called Operation Downfall, and it involved in addition to thorough bombing, fighting all over Japan that would kill approximately 10-20 million Japanese.
咱就在政治游戏中，咱就告诉他们，让政治家知道什么对他最有利，让这些国家知道什么最有利。 对吧？前天就该签那个对抖音、微信制裁了，不是上星期就该做了，没有吧？5周前都应该把重锤落下了，对香港中共银行、平安银行、这个招商银行、汇丰银行，还有建设银行、中国银行进行制裁，到现在还没落下来。惩罚了个林郑月娥几个小光棍算什么呀？ 是不是？但是，战友们，你看昨天，美国曼哈顿南区检察官起诉美国步枪协会主席，那是咱哥们儿，杰森是咱们兄弟。我今天可以从来没说过，我今天公开说了，在那个大报纸上最重要那个、最帅那个就是咱哥们儿杰森，咱们兄弟，坚决支持爆料革命的，川普总统的最好的哥们儿，昨天打电话给我，哎呀，文贵怎么办？我要开始爆料了。把步枪协会起诉了，对川普总统不是好事，对我们是好事那是步枪协会是美国的共产党，听说相当腐败相当有实力影响巨大，也支持爆料革命，但是。 这回一被起诉，啥感觉川普总统，包括步枪协会会更加支持爆料革命。所以说呀，兄弟姐妹们，这就叫政治。啥叫政治现在只有一条路，此时此刻，船上直播，华盛顿、德克萨斯州。 加州、旧金山、俄亥俄州，还有今天的长岛，都在讲一句话：共和党想赢，或民主党想赢，或任何一个美国政客未来想赢得未来，只有一个方向：干掉共产党。
墨西哥 CCP 病毒死亡人数突破5万人，非洲的 CCP 病毒病例超过100万。美国卫生专家预测，到12月将有30万美国人死于 CCP 病毒。研究发现，冠状病毒可能抑制关键的免疫细胞。一位高级卫生官员说，俄罗斯的病毒疫苗已进入最终测试阶段。瑞士政府说，瑞士已经与 Ms.L 签署了协议，以确保美国生物技术公司正在开发的疫苗能够早日获得。 致命的贝鲁特爆炸后，联合国和人道主义志愿者正在帮助黎巴嫩政府展开救援。全球股市因美中关系紧张而下滑，